That's in. That is in. That's a wrap, son. That's a wrap.
Yeah. Yep. Tap. Dustin Poirier tapped. Khabib Nurmagomedov
his face turned blue like right away
via rear naked choke. Pretty dominant performance from Khabib.
I was wondering who Khabib was about to jump on out the crowd this time.
He hugged Dana White. God. Ew. That's disgusting.
Wow.
But Khabib winning in, again, dominant fashion. Pretty much dominated Dustin on the ground throughout. It's going to be hard to fight that. You know, you're going to need somebody that has equally fantastic wrestling and fantastic jiu-jitsu. Like, and really the only guys that...
Gaethje and Ferguson.
I mean, that's it. But even then, like, their grappling games...
That's a big if.
And you know what I mean? Like, it's still clear that Khabib has a giant advantage over those guys on the ground. You know what I mean? Like, it's still that obvious. It's gonna be weird. It's gonna be a weird day when Khabib loses because it's gonna be shocking regardless. It's gonna have to be because there's no one right now in the top 15 that look and go, "Yep, that guy can beat Khabib," or "That guy in 2 years can beat Khabib." I don't see it right now. I just don't.
The
toughest fight for Khabib right now is the fight that he's been wanting forever, and that's the George St. Pierre fight. But there's no way the UFC makes that.
No, God, no. At least not at 155.
No. They might do a catchweight. No. I can see that, but I still don't think they do it because they don't want to give George the satisfaction of destroying basically 2 divisions and walking away.
Yeah, it won't be for a title if that fight does happen. Man, maybe, you know, and this definitely would be a stretch of the imagination here, but a more developed Gregor Gillespie. You know, out of the guys rising up through the ranks is about the only one that I'm even.
He would need like 3 or 4 years tops.
Yeah,
and even then, like he would mainly hope that Khabib is like declining at that point in time, more so than he's going to be good enough to beat this Khabib.
Is Dustin wearing a Khabib t-shirt?
Yes.
Oh yeah, and he's wearing a Dustin Poirier shirt. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Okay.
That's cool.
That is.
It's like athletes like switching jerseys. I like that. That's cool. Phone lines are open, guys. 323-870-4051. Press 1 to get in the queue. International callers calling on Skype. Mixed Combat Radio. How did Khabib win? Somebody asking in the chat. He won via rear naked choke, dominated the ground, and got the choke in the 3rd round. Dustin had a brief moment early in the 2nd round where I think he hurt Khabib with a combination, but Khabib largely dominated this fight and had another stellar performance where it's clear that he might be the best lightweight we've ever seen. You know, like it's almost a matter of fact at this point because his skill set is so dominant at this point in time that I don't know if we've seen an equal at this division in its history. And overall thoughts on the performance of Khabib Nurmagomedov. Where does he go next? And on top of that, Dustin Poirier, thoughts on his performance and where does he go next?
I say Dustin Poirier did make a good accounting for himself as best as you can against someone with such a suffocating style. Mm-hmm. Had a moment or two, but as of right now, the only thing you can hope to have against Khabib is a moment or two. So he did what he did, man. He earned the shot. He tried to execute, couldn't do it at the end. You're talking about one of the greatest lightweights of all time. So no shame in Poirier for that. As far as what Khabib did, he did what he did. Like he did what he always does. He goes in there, he smothers you, he wears you out, he gets the tap, or he beats you into oblivion.
Agreed.
You know, textbook stuff. I think when you're talking about what's next, it has to be Tony Ferguson. Yeah. Anybody else, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to entertain it. Anything else is a joke. Tony Ferguson is the only person who needs to be fighting for a lightweight title in the near future. That's it.
Leaf in the chat with the troll. I see Khabib bending the knee to Triple C. I mean, who has the better accolades in amateur wrestling? I mean, let's be honest. Just kidding. No, it's not happening. before I jump to my opinion about the fight, remember, guys, call in 323-870-4051. And remember, patreon.com/Mixed Combat Radio. We're also going to talk about the news today of Nate Diaz versus Jorge Masvidal in a second, so stay tuned for that as well. But my thoughts on the main event could be, I agree with basically everything you're saying. Tony Ferguson is the clear guy that needs to be fighting next. He is probably the next guy that when we talk about ability to capitalize on moments, Tony Ferguson is up there with one of the best in the division to do that. Also, when we talk about, or I talked about earlier, the needing to pressure Khabib to win. You need to keep Khabib on the back foot where he is less efficient in order to win the fight against him. Tony Ferguson is one of the best pressure fighters we've seen at lightweight, other than probably Khabib. So it would make sense that Tony Ferguson, obviously from his resume and his winning streak, is the next guy. But on top of that, just from a pure who is the best guy to beat Khabib next, it's possibly Tony Ferguson. And then next up, probably Justin Gaethje. But even then, Khabib is probably going to be the clear favorite to reign in this division for a long time. I'm still going to say the George St. Pierre fight is the fight to make, and I will pay $100 for that pay-per-view easy. Okay.
Don't
UFC.
say that too loud before it happens.
Just do it, please. Just do it. I'm okay.
Not
with
$400.
Hey, Mayweather Pacquiao for $100. I'll take George St. Pierre Khabib for $100.
I went to a fight party for that one.
Okay, you can just come to my pad. We do a show. Okay.
All right. Cool. All right.
Yeah,
all
it's
right,
good. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
But moving on, sort of in the same, sphere of Khabib is obviously Nate Diaz. I would say, just because I could see that fight materializing in some form. But first, Nate Diaz, Jorge Masvidal is next, according to Ariel Helwani, and Dana White later confirmed to Brett Okamoto. So let's break down this news a little bit, Ant, and because let's be honest,
I thought the UFC was going to screw it up.
We did.
It just like no way. This makes too much sense. The noise about Usman versus Covington kind of falling apart, and Masvidal tweeting out to everyone else at welterweight who wanted some smoke and all that other stuff. Like, I really thought they were going to screw up Diaz versus Masvidal. So I'm glad they got that right. Let
me read the series of events per Ariel Helwani, because it is quite funny what they try to do to Usman. The fight got finalized yesterday afternoon, and Dana White just confirmed it to Brett Okamoto. They tried to originally make it a couple of weeks ago, but were far apart on numbers. Not surprising. Then they tried to book Usman versus Covington, but negotiations stalled with Covington. Then they tried to do Usman versus Masvidal, but after Masvidal agreed, they couldn't come to terms with Usman. In fact, things got so bad with Usman that they threatened to strip him and pulled all his guest fighter duties in Abu Dhabi. At that point, they reached out to Leon Edwards to see if he can do a vacant title fight versus Masvidal. Those talks didn't get very far because in the midst of all that, around Wednesday night, talks reignited with Diaz. By Thursday night, it was looking very promising. And then after a 10th day of negotiations, the deal was done. 5-round main event, no title except for the Baz motherfucker title, and it's MSG. Also, same day as Canelo Kovalev. We're going to talk about that as well in a second. If you want, Ant, if you're
definitely wouldn't mind talking about that one.
But
aren't they making an actual baddest motherfucker belt now too, right?
Yes, but first, the series of events that we hear about, them threatening to strip Usman, make Masvidal, Leon Edwards for a vacant belt. Thoughts on all of this? The series of events that led us to Diaz Masvidal 5-round pay-per-view main event in MSG. And by the way, I'm so happy about that. But Ant, the series of events we have to get there, your thoughts on it?
Now, one thing that we, maybe not me and you or other people in the media and that comment and follow this stuff on a regular basis, but a lot of times the UFC is able to set the narrative of who's being difficult in negotiations and who's ducking who and whatnot based on whatever information they leak to their favorite reporter of the week. And that's how this thing normally goes, and fight announcements that get made before the fights are actually signed, and all sorts of tactics that the UFC has to pressure people into falling in line with negotiations. So with that being said, it calls into question this entire welterweight fiasco that we've had since Tyron Woodley knocked out Robbie Lawler. Because since then it's been a constant ring of fuckery. It's been okay, Woodley's ducking this guy. Well, he's holding out for Diaz. Well, now now George St. Pierre's coming back, but now we're gonna make Masvidal. They've had so many different iterations of welterweight title fights since Woodley knocked out Robbie Lawler, and in every case, the UFC always finds a way to make the fighter look like the bad one, to make the fighter look like they're ducking or they're being too difficult. We see Colby Covington getting his chance for undisputed belt taken away from him twice. He wanted nose surgery because he just fought a 5-rounder. There's so many different things that have gone wrong with this, that now seeing this come to fruition, it's like, yeah, if you just paid the guys what they asked for, or you negotiate with them for better offers, and you just honor the commitments that you've already made, maybe these things just happen. Maybe these fights fall into place. Maybe when the entire world is begging for Diaz versus Masvidal, you just fucking make it. Maybe when you give someone, and Colby Covington, an interim belt, maybe you just honor that and let the guy fight the the actual champion. Perhaps.
I want smoke.
I agree with everything you're saying. I mean, this is a classic Dana White UFC story of negotiation fuckery, to use your word exactly, which by the way, fantastic word.
Thank you.
I will add to that. It's one of the best words ever made. And you got to feel for a guy like Usman here, who is obviously the successor to Woodley's legacy in a way. It feels like he's going to be pigeonholed into that. He's going to be he's the next African American black fighter in that division that's the champion. He's outspoken in a lot of ways and clearly has a sense of value or self-value that runs into conflict with the UFC's perception of him and just fighters overall. Right? If you want to hear more on that, definitely check out me and Anthony's video earlier this week about the UFC antitrust hearing. I'm of the mind that Usman is going to be connected with these types of stories for as long as he's a champion. I'll be honest. I just think it's par for the course now. John Jones gets away with it because he makes them so much money that the UFC kind of at this point shuts up. Right?
Yeah, because they don't really, with John Jones, they don't really have much of a choice.
Yeah.
They are so starved for stars, for genuine stars, and Usman isn't there yet. And probably with his fight style, probably won't ever get there, no matter how good of a champion he proves to be. Just his personality and the way he fights probably won't reach that level, at least in the U.S. I mean, I think if you play the Nigerian immigrant angle, as MMA has a bigger presence in Africa, yeah, from that perspective. But from the perspective of the run-of-the-mill North American fan that's watching this stream right now, no, Kamaru Usman is probably not going to be the next star, or even the gateway to a market like Tyron Woodley would have been had he been given the proper push.
I agree completely. It's just, again, curious to see Usman's career going forward and the relationship with the UFC, because I do think it's going to be a rocky one going forward. But circling back to Diaz Masvidal pay-per-view main event, they got it right. The UFC got it right for this matchup, and kudos to them in a sense for somehow not fucking this one up. But even though they tried and seemingly every single occasion to mess this one up, at least they didn't. Thank you. Finally.
You know what? Maybe we shouldn't be congratulating the UFC on not fucking it up. Maybe we should just acknowledge that they fell upward, because the way this played out publicly, they tried to fuck it up. They tried to mess this up as much as possible. And somehow or another, it still came together. It came together by accident. Yeah, that's what it sounds like to me.
I'll put it this way. Thank you, MMA gods, for not letting the UFC fuck this up.
Yes.
Knock on wood. You guys have messed with us a lot over the years. We apologize. We've made sacrifices to you. It's all come to fruition now. We got Diaz versus Masvidal, the pay-per-view main event in MSG, so you know it's going to have all the New York media tour and buzz that's going to be attached to it. I am insanely curious to see not only, of course, the matchup in and of itself, because I do think it's a competitive, fun matchup. We saw Nate Diaz that had arguably his career best performance against Anthony Pettis just a month or so ago. And Masvidal had a historic knockout win against Ben Askren, again, a couple months ago. So the hype for this fight within the community is huge. But it seems like those two guys are trending upwards and transcending the market and the industry. And this is the first time, really, we get to see what they do, what they really draw, even though the combination probably might lead to a bigger increase than, let's say, a Diaz versus kind of a nobody, or a guy that doesn't really draw, or Masvidal versus a guy that doesn't really draw. But these are two guys that historically have never gotten a push from the UFC, are not pay-per-view draws, are not champions even. They're main eventing a card, a pay-per-view card with each other. Let's see how big of stars they are. And I know even in this paradigm, it's hard to say that because all pay-per-views are ESPN Plus. The lack of marketing, I would say, overall for pay-per-views by the UFC because they get a flat check from ESPN for all of these pay-per-views is a big reason why a lot of these cards have failed in terms of buy rates. But this card, no matter what, is going to do a decent number, in my opinion. We're going to see that they are good draws as fighters, as prize fighters. And I can't wait to see them use that against the UFC. Cannot wait for that.
Because one thing that's very crucial about this fight is that this is the fight that both of these guys wanted. Just like when Diaz fought Pettis, this is a fight that Team Diaz and Team Pettis brought to the UFC and proposed. And the UFC just signed the check and let it happen. So with Masvidal and Diaz campaigning for this fight and being very vocal about it and making it very clear, they weren't gonna take any kind of fight for any kind of money. Mm-hmm. They wanted each other or title fights, and they want top dollar. And they weren't budging, and it happened. So this shows what happens when fighters come together. Now, the last good opportunity the fighters had for this, two fighters separately coming together and making something happen, despite what the UFC wants, was Conor McGregor and Cowboy Cerrone. And they both wanted that fight. And Conor insisted on a main event, and Cowboy, for whatever reason, was on Twitter just saying, just sign the damn contract, when they were trying to make it a 3-round co-main event, which would have been less money. So Cowboy shot that one down. Cowboy played into the UFC's interest in that. But now you see, and that what would have been a great fight, a pay-per-view worthy main event without a title, gone by the wayside. So now you see when the fighters stick together and they decide these are the terms we want and we're not accepting anything less, this is what happens, and everybody's happy because the UFC may be protesting. They may have very begrudgingly slit those bout offers across the table, but they'll be very happy to cash that check when it happens.
Agreed. And again, it harkens back to when Diaz was in his post-fight presser, post-Pettis, right? And somebody asked him, I forget who it was exactly, and asked him, hey, Dana White was just did his presser, and he said, you finally moved the needle. He admitted that. And Diaz kind of smirked to himself and said, he shouldn't have said that. He should not have said, he should not have admitted that. And guess what? It came back to bite Dana White in the ass a little bit. But moving on, but still connected to the story in a way, the same night as this is going to be Canelo versus Kovalev. Again, probably the biggest name in boxing other than Floyd Mayweather, maybe Manny Pacquiao at this point. Now, Ant, obviously, you're more of an MMA guy. I'm more of a boxing guy, so I think this is why this is going to be a good discussion. And we're
MMA is better.
we're going to get into maybe the fight itself in a second, but first off, the competition of the night, the ratings battle, DAZN and Canelo and Kovalev, or ESPN Plus pay-per-view with Nate Diaz versus Jorge Masvidal. Who's going to get more buzz that night?
I think it's going to be Diaz and Masvidal, because typically with a Canelo fight, you can always count on the Hispanic market. You can always count on them to be paying attention, but that's going to be divided. You have an all Hispanic main event for the UFC, and two guys, one who for years now has been a cult favorite, who just in the past 3 years has risen to some sort of pop culture notoriety. And then Masvidal, who for years has labored away and been a hardcore darling, but now I think he's also on a reality show or something too, is becoming a mainstream name with the devastating knockouts that he just had in his last 2 fights. I mean, you were there at the Honda Center with me for UFC 241, and
for
the
Diaz
crowd
status,
went nuts.
Well, let's be honest.
Went nuts for Masvidal just being in the crowd.
No, that too. But I mean, let's be honest. The Nate Diaz army, as he calls it, right? The Diaz army. That is such a giant contingent of Hispanic combat sports fans that, I didn't really think about it from that prism, right? Or through that prism of Canelo is a Hispanic Mexican draw, a traditional draw for the Mexican market, of course. But this is probably the first time the UFC can probably legitimately compete with that market, or at least the Mexican-American side of that market, right?
Right.
And if we're talking purely the zone U.S. numbers versus ESPN Plus U.S. pay-per-view numbers, it's going to be close. I would assume that maybe Canelo and Kovalev, from just the pure subscriber base that DAZN have, might have more overall viewers. But if, let's say, Masvidal does over 500,000 buys, it doesn't fucking matter. Those are pay-per-view buys compared to a view on a subscription app. Right. You know what I mean? Like the monetary, just the revenue gain from a Diaz-Masvidal fight is going to be completely different, perhaps. And I think, if I'm predicting it, will be, because I think that is going to be a successful pay-per-view, even though it's on only ESPN Plus. And again, the battle for the Mexican-American market in combat sports is going to be a battle. And the only thing that might hurt it is that, honestly, Diaz-Masvidal is not on the West Coast, where the Mexican-American market is, right? They're in New York. That helps it for the overall U.S. exposure, because that's the media capital of the U.S. and the world. But if you're trying to get, or I should say, galvanize the Mexican-American base, it helps to be in the Mexican-American market, literally, like location-wise. And Canelo is going to be, to an extent, of course.
Yeah, because unless you're planning on being in the arena, it really wouldn't matter, because unless the TV times change.
No, not necessarily. I think there's a legitimate aspect just of ground support in terms of marketing. Like if you're in LA, if you're in Vegas, if you're in these spots, San Diego, and there's gonna be more marketing for a Canelo fight because Canelo's fighting in Vegas, and therefore they're wanting you to buy a ticket and drive to Vegas, versus the UFC. They're not expecting to actually have a lot of marketing within LA, within San Diego, within Vegas, because the fight's in MSG, New York. They're not really expecting you to buy a plane ticket and travel there. You know what I mean? That's the only thing that might affect it, is that maybe DAZN and Golden Boy are more focused on like real ground support marketing, billboards, bus stop ads, all that stuff.
The marketing machine of ESPN powered by Disney.
No, of course. No.
And that's like another level of attention. That's a whole nother level of attention. And also, we're talking about, I mean, I do get your point. I mean, we're in the LA area, but we've seen plenty of billboards and advertisements for all sorts of UFC fights that don't occur in the West. I've seen plenty. I know you have as well. True. Granted, we roll in certain circles, so maybe that's maybe that's why.
No, you're absolutely right. But I would say it's gonna be interesting to see that, because we're in LA, right? This is going to be the market that they probably battle for the most, even though both fights aren't in this market. Because, traditionally speaking, Nate Diaz is a huge LA draw, and Canelo Alvarez is a huge Mexican draw, and LA has a ginormous Mexican population. So, you're going to have to battle for the real estate of the Mexican-American market, and LA is going to be one of the hot spots for it. It just is, even though both fights aren't in that location. But at least one of them is close enough to where if you're in LA, you can drive and go see the fight. Right. But I largely agree with you that I think Diaz-Masvidal is going to be the bigger pop of the night in terms of attention from the media, from the casual media audience, and just the public, right? I think Diaz-Masvidal is going to just pop more than Canelo Kovalev. It just will. But let's talk a little bit about Canelo Kovalev, and then we're going to get out of here and wrap up the show, guys. Obviously, the fight is happening. Alvarez-Kovalev. Alvarez moving up 2 weight classes to light heavyweight to face Sergey Kovalev. Sergey Kovalev looking fantastic as of late, even though he had a tough fight with Anthony Yarde. Thoughts on this fight, Anthony? I know you're not a boxing guy, but I know you know these two guys. Thoughts on Canelo moving up this much in weight and facing a guy of Kovalev's ability and stature?
Why not? I mean, he's kind of done everything he can where he normally stays at. So why not? Kovalev is definitely not on the upside of his career. So this is like Roy Jones against John Ruiz to me. This is the smaller guy moving up for the right opponent in a winnable fight.
I don't know if it's winnable.
I think it's winnable. I mean,
it's winnable. No, it is winnable, but I don't. I always make this distinction: is Canelo? Does he have a possibility of winning, or does he have a probability of winning? Is he most likely to win, or does he just have a chance of winning? Those are two very different things, right? Dustin Poirier had a chance of winning, but it wasn't probable against Khabib, right?
Well, I'm not saying that Canelo should go out there and wash him, but from a style perspective, he does give Kovalev some issues. Kovalev has shown himself very susceptible to the body shots, and seems to be Canelo's specialty. He definitely will have a speed advantage over him. He'll be able to switch stances and do some interesting things from a footwork perspective that Kovalev may not be ready for. So I think this is a fight that he's looked at and like, oh yeah, I can beat this guy, and I know how to beat him. When you're talking about a boxer the caliber of Canelo with the machine behind him that's there, they don't just pick anybody to fight. These opponents, especially a challenge that's this dangerous, there's a lot of calculation that goes into that. I think Team Alvarez has looked at the X's and O's and decided, yeah, this is the guy. We move up for this guy, the biggest possible name with and with the risk mitigated as much as possible.
I agree in terms of Canelo and his team being that calculated. I think they are. Obviously, I think it's undisputed at this point that they do that, right? Or any top fighter does, right? Like that's what they do. Top athletes, period, are calculating individuals. You have to be to get to that level of any sort of athletic competition or sport. However, Kovalev is so ginormous compared to Canelo. Canelo's already gone up 3 divisions throughout his career, right? And he's already a guy that isn't a big middleweight. He's a 5'9", 5'8". He's going up against a 5'11", 6-foot, legit light heavyweight that cuts down to 175. It's going to be a tough fight for Canelo Alvarez. He's going to have to get behind that jab, or I should say get under that jab of Kovalev, get around it, work the body like you say. And he's going to do that throughout because I think his power, while pretty respectable, obviously, at middleweight, and throughout his career, he's had respectable power. I don't know if it's going to be enough at 175. The power going up in weight class is always one of those tricky things where it's hard to tell if it's going to carry over.
You got to eat the right clenbuterol.
That does help. The right carne asada, it is what it is, man.
Mexican burgers.
But I do. Well, at this point in time, it's all right fight. I understand that it's going to be a big fight for boxing and for overall casual fans, but it's a fight that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I'd rather have seen a Triple G trilogy fight, Demetrius Andrade matchup. Hell, it's in the olive branch over Jamal Charlo. There's tons of other names I would have rather seen than a Sergey Kovalev matchup for Canelo Alvarez. But hey, this is the business of prize fighting. But Anthony, that's going to be it for today, man. We're going to wrap up the show because we have no callers, which is fine. I'm okay with that. Because last time me and
Felder Barboza talk about that garbage 30-27 scorecard for Felder.
I'll save that for you for Walkout Network or whatever you do. And
Whatever I do.
I mean, wait.
The condescending nature, Mr. Hunter.
No, it's. Oh my God. No, I just know that your usual plan was a Tuesday or Monday show is not planned. So I don't know what you're.
Yeah, it's totally unplanned right now.
I don't know what you're doing.
There will be the trenches on Wednesday.
Yes.
For SureDog.com. That's for sure happening. But everything else, I don't know yet. So normally there would be Off the Chain, the panel discussion show, but I just don't quite know what's going to happen this week. We'll see.
You know how you feeling, man? You know it happens.
It happens, man. It happens. But it's all good though. Like once I get this iron out some of the technical issues as far as the broadcast goes. This old Google Hangouts thing to mess me up big time. So now I gotta sit here and mess around with OBS and all these stream rates and all this stuff that don't make no damn sense to me in order to get the Walk of Shame back up.
Dude, I you know I can help you out in that in like 10 minutes, right? Just call me up.
I know, but you know how prideful I am, right? I was trying to figure it out by myself, man, and it just wasn't working. No,
trust me. You know how long it took me to figure out OBS? It took me a very long time to figure out OBS.
It's not very user friendly.
No, it's not. It's not at all. So trust me.
Free. Yeah.
Trust me. The amount of tutorial videos I had to watch on YouTube that still didn't make sense to me, and it was just trial by error at the end of it. Yeah, it took me at least a year to figure it out.
Oh yeah, and let's not forget too that I'll be back on duty in a couple hours here for Bellator 226.
That's right. I won't be. Only Anthony.
You're not watching that one? I mean, it's the heavyweight title, man.
I'm definitely gonna have it on in the background and then watch the main event.
Well, I think this is more notable. I mean, granted, Bader defending his heavyweight belt for the first time is, that means something.
Look, but Congo, hold on. Congo pushed him, so that means we're gonna get at least 3 or 4 nut shots from Congo in this fight because he's already pissed off. So I'm excited for the main event.
Well, I trade you 1 growing shot for 2 short tugs. I think there's gonna be a foul happy Czech Congo today, as always. There seems to be, but the featherweight tournament is starting today. That's the biggest deal about this card. So I'm really looking forward to Daniel Strauss versus Derek Campos, Emmanuel Sanchez, and Taiwan Claxton. Should be crazy. There are some. Once you get past the 37 bout prelim, and you get to the main card, it's some good stuff there.
Shout out to Bellator, man. Shout out to what they're doing. Find me, Matt Hunter, MCR, all platforms. Of course, hit the like button, share the show, subscribe, patreon.com/Mixed Combat Radio. We're going to be back on tomorrow with Rob and maybe Fu. So don't worry, we're going to do a whole boxing show tomorrow as well. But Anthony, tell the people where to find you, where they can find your work, all that fun stuff.
All right, you can find me on Twitter at AntWalkerMMA. You can find my work on SureDog.com. There's a drop-down menu. It says features. My name is there, so you can check out my columns there. I got the good, bad, and the ugly, the post-fight column that will be going live tomorrow. It will be based on UFC 220 or what the hell did we just watch? 242. Perhaps Bellator 226, depending on how that card goes. I might lump some of that information in there as well. The mailbag column Ask Ant should be out now, or it'll be out later today. I submitted that motherfucker yesterday, so
who knows?
Publish it. I don't know these things. I just do these things, and I'm woefully behind on some scripts for MMA On Point. I think they just put out a video of something I wrote like earlier in the week, so check that out. I write so much stuff I honestly can't remember what it was, but it's good.
It's good. Are you sure? I don't know.
I'm sure it is, but I don't remember what it was that I wrote. It was at least the last thing that they published. So,
and you guys have a great night, great evening, wherever you are. Hope you guys enjoyed the main event of UFC 242. With Khabib Nurmagomedov defeated Dustin Poirier via 3rd round rear naked choke. Be back on tomorrow. Peace.
Just send me location.
I said it last year. We're not here just to take part. We're here to take over. That's fucking illegal.
Everybody's on steroids. The whole UFC, everybody.
Who the fuck is that guy? Come on, guys. It's normal. Hey, pussy, are you still there?